Sometimes there's no one else who loves me like you used to. Sometimes we're not ourselves. There's no one I can turn to. And I know all the feelings that we shared are in the past. And I know your relationships are never meant to last. And I'll take some time, but I'll be alright. We're moving on. We're moving on. I know times are tough, but I've had enough. We're moving on. We're moving on. We're moving on. Sometimes there's no one else who loves me like you used to. Sometimes we're not ourselves. There's no one I can turn to. And I'll take some time, but I'll be alright. We're moving on. We're moving on. I know times are tough, but I've had enough. We're moving on. We're moving on. We're moving on.
Welcome, 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 you guys. I see the early birds are showing up and in the house. Welcome to this week's edition of Unfiltered. Guys, make sure that you like and share. Good morning, Gifty. Good morning, Trina. Hey, Melissa. Congratulations on your win a couple of weeks ago. Hey, Jackie. Hey, Michael. I see you guys in the house. If you don't see our regulars, make sure that you let them know that we are live. Hopefully, you guys saw the replay from last week. If you did, welcome, Dee, to the broadcast. If you did, then you know that you're in for a special treat this week. I'm looking for JW Tony. I'm looking for Tish and Shanita. Where are my regulars at? Where's Charlie? You guys, we are starting on time today. So let's get on the broadcast. Guys, welcome. I missed y'all last week. Hopefully you did get a chance and opportunity to see the replay. There is so much. Good morning, Tish. There is so much that is just happening in this world that we live in. We talked a couple of, hey, Christina Callwood, welcome. Thanks for joining us. We talked a couple of weeks ago, and let me switch over here really quick. We talked a couple of weeks ago about some different things that are happening. Hey, Princess Kendrick, welcome, that are happening in our Stay Woke segment, because that's what we're here for. Be blessed and stay woke. And we talked about Juneteenth, very interesting, and the fact that, you know, they made Juneteenth a holiday before they passed any of those bills related to violence and things like that against African Americans. Very interesting. We have not talked about the human microchipping. That is a segment that's coming, as well as environmental racism. But we touched a little bit on critical race theory, and that is where we're going to point the pin today. I'm excited to have with us. Hey, Tina, Alona, welcome. I'm excited to have with us. He is no stranger to our show. He is a successful attorney who is also an adjunct professor of law at Morehouse. He's taught race and theory. He's taught constitutional law. He has taught a winning moot court team, and he's very engaging. And actually, you guys voted him as one of your favorite speakers, so we're excited to have him back. There were over 500 people who saw his first broadcast, and probably more after this past week. So we're excited to have him here. Guys, please help me welcome, with no further ado, we're going to get into this, our guest for today to talk about critical race theory, none other than Winfield Ward Murray. Welcome.
Good morning. How are you?
I am good, and I'm excited because we can see you and we can hear you clearly today. So I'm excited about that, and I'm excited to have you. You know, I got to tell you, I was looking out there on Chrome, and for a quick second, I'm going to go ahead and share that screen with everyone. I was looking out there on Chrome at some of the things that are happening just kind of with this critical race theory debate, right? And I'm trying to figure out, like, where did this even come from? How come all of a sudden we're talking about this like it's a new concept or it's never been heard of before, right? So really quick, let me show these guys what's happening here with critical race theory. So if you take a look at my screen here, you can see that when you get on there, there's all these articles like today, yesterday, the day before, every single day someone's talking about critical race theory, the parents, the schools, the governors. Even the Southern Baptist Convention is having a debate over critical race theory. So one of the things that I kind of ascertained from looking through this, Murray, is that part of this had to do with the fact that years ago, I don't know if you guys remember, President Trump signed an executive order banning diversity training in the government. And he didn't want anyone talking about anything that made it seem like America had a racist history. He didn't want anyone talking about anything that brought those things that put a bad light on America. But then all of a sudden, it looks like it became this political agenda or narrative. And it's created confusion. In fact, there's one gentleman, I was learning this while reading, who is kind of mostly responsible for the confusion. And he stated on his Twitter page that the best way pretty much to kill a thing is to create confusion and to change the definition. So let's talk real talk about what the definition of critical race theory is and what your thoughts on it. Take it from there.
Well, so I think I'm going to take it one step further.
Do that.
So honestly, I think that critical race theory, you ask where it comes from, why is it now this talking point? And I think you really have to go back to the Barack Obama administration, because I think that there were so many people that were upset, that were disenchanted, that felt like they were losing their place in this society by having an African American as president, that it created sort of this undercurrent of sort of unrest and just sort of angst that, you know, has sort of culminated in this, not only the laws that President Trump was trying to put forward, but really the negative discussion about critical race theory. And what baffles me most is that most of the people that are negative, that have all of these negative things to say about critical race theory, actually don't even have a true understanding of what critical race theory is. Critical race theory isn't the bashing or the admonishment of any other race. All it is really a discussion about how race and law intersects. And I think that anybody, regardless of if you are Black, white, or any other ethnicity, can understand and appreciate that there absolutely is a discussion to be had about the intersection of race and law in this country.
You know, what's interesting is that critical race theory actually has its roots in the law. It started as this legal study about institutional racism and being able to identify it. But at some point, the baton was picked up by a group of people who decided that this is now a political issue, who have now, there are, I don't know how many states right now, have put laws into place to ban the teaching of critical race theory, and it's not even being taught in their schools, Winfield.
Right.
I've never seen anything like it. So for those who've never heard of it, who don't understand it, welcome, Roseanne. Explain exactly what is critical race theory.
Well, really, it's what I just said. It is really just looking at how race and law intersect, right? But before you even start having a conversation about critical race theory, you really have to start having a conversation about what is race? How do we define race in this country? So the last time I was on your show, Bernadette, we talked about convict leasing and how that came to be, right? And so we had.
And for those who are new to the broadcast, really quickly, tell everyone what this convict leasing is.
Okay, so after the end of slavery, what you had was the advent sort of convict leasing, which is where African Americans were arrested, sometimes for petty crimes like begging, being transient, being homeless, or not really having any basis at all to arrest individuals, but arresting them anyway so that they could be forced to work at these sort of on these jobs, you know. So for instance, one of the mayors in Atlanta, Mayor English, if you're familiar with Atlanta, you may know of English Avenue, English Park, right? He was the mayor of Atlanta. He also owned a prison, but he also owned a brick company. And so he would have people arrested. He would take the people from his prison and have them work basically 12, 14-hour long days in this convict leasing program, where basically you pay people little of nothing. The convicts really didn't get paid anything. The prison, if anyone, was paid. And these people died. Lots of them died because, unlike with slavery, where you at least had the appreciation for a slave as much as you would have for a horse or a cow. Like, you don't want to kill your cow or kill your horse because they're profitable to you. They are working. For convict leasing, it didn't work like that. They didn't care. They just said, well, we'll just go and arrest more people. If you die, we will just arrest more people. And so people literally were worked to death at these convict leasing sites. And this happened across the country, but it is known to have happened here in Atlanta. They literally had a burial site where they would just throw the bodies as people died, and then they would go and arrest more people, right? So that was what we discussed last time. And so I say all of that. Today, we're talking about critical race theory, just to say that before convict leasing, before slavery, you know, laws were really created that disenfranchised people based upon class, because there wasn't really a difference at that point in this country with regard to race, because other races had not really been introduced to this country at that time. So it was really based upon class, your socioeconomic status. It wasn't until slaves arrived at this country that you then started to see laws that were written. They may have been neutral on their face, but in their application, they disproportionately affected people of color, African Americans, right? And so that's where the study of critical race theory really begins in this country, is when Africans arrived in this country, how were laws created that impacted their ability to work, thrive, succeed in this country? And if you look at the laws that were written at every level, the laws were written so that African Americans would always be kept as on a lower rung than the majority, right? So even you had laws that said that African Americans could not serve as a witness in court.
Yes.
You have laws that said that if a Black woman was raped by a white man, that she could not testify in her own case against her white attacker, right? And so when you have these types of laws that have existed for decades, centuries, right? What does that do to that particular demographic?
You know, you bring up an excellent point. And as you're talking about the past, I'm actually seeing the present. And I'm thinking about things like the laws that made it so that if you had crack cocaine, it was treated differently than if you had powder cocaine.
Absolutely.
Why? Because that's predominantly found in African American neighborhoods. And you can see those things replete throughout the law. So we're not even just talking about the past, we're talking about little subtleties and nuances that exist in our laws today. So it's interesting that you mentioned that, because literally, I think, what was it, a couple of days ago, that the federal government is suing Georgia over the changes to the voting here, because it is unequitable, according to the federal government, for African Americans.
Right.
Yet, yet we have, an executive order that was issued saying we shouldn't be talking about diversity, and there's nothing going on in our country. We don't have a racist past, and nobody's being held down. But at the end of the day, it does come back to control and to money. It comes back to the money.
Absolutely. And so, Bernadette, you and I were both prosecutors. And one of the things that I often ask my students, who tend to be a little bit younger than we are, I always ask them, do they feel like race is still an issue in this country? And, until the Trump administration, I was shocked and surprised to see that so many individuals in the younger demographic who really thought that we had gotten past, and again, this is pre-Trump, had really thought that we had gotten past the issue of race in this country. But I always ask them, have you ever stepped foot inside of a criminal courtroom? I don't know about you, Bernadette, but when I arrived as a prosecutor, I was shocked to see individuals either on a copy of charges or incarcerated, and every single person looked like me, right? Every single person was a person of color. And to me, and I don't know if I ever shared this with you, but I actually started to get physically ill within the first 3 weeks, because it was as if no other ethnicity existed in the city of Atlanta other than African American males. And occasionally we would get African American females, but by and large, it was African American males. So right there, I always challenge my students, if race is not an issue, then how do we get to the point where our prisons are filled, inundated with African Americans, right? We are 7 times more likely to be convicted than the majority. We are 50% more likely to be arrested in the first place. And so there's this whole chain reaction, sort of happening at this point, right? You have the arrest by the officers. You know that areas that are that have more African Americans living in it are targeted.
I think we might have lost his connection, but I was going to say, and I'll keep the conversation going. What's interesting is, as he was talking, guys, I kept hearing, as Murray was talking, and he's back with us, I kept hearing policing in some neighborhoods, patrolling in other neighborhoods. But keep going, Murray.
So, I also ask my students, where do we place the blame? Do we place the blame on the police? Do we place the blame on the prosecutors? Do we place the blame on the judges? And remember, it wasn't until the 1960s that individuals received the right to counsel because of the case Gideons versus Wainwright, right? Before the 1960s, you didn't even have the opportunity to be represented, right? The right to be represented in court when you were facing a murder charge, an assault charge, whatever the case may be. And a lot of people have negative things to say about public defenders. I get it, right? I don't think that any of us says that, the world is perfect, right? But what I am saying is, can you imagine what this would look like if we didn't have the right to assistance of counsel?
Oh my gosh.
I can't even imagine if we're 7 times as likely to be convicted at this point with the assistance of counsel. And remember, public defenders serve about, I think, 95% of all individuals that are charged with a criminal offense. Can you imagine that?
as you're sitting here talking about your experience as a prosecutor, I have to tell you my experience as a prosecutor, I saw the same thing. And what I also saw on the other side of the room was overworked public defenders who had too many files on their table, who weren't even fighting for the clients. Anytime I have to walk across the room as a prosecutor to tell them, you know, you have an affirmative defense. Like, all you got to do is say this.
Right.
And the person will be released. Then I'm doing your job. So why not switch to the other side? And that's actually one of the reasons I became a defense attorney. And I need everybody to be clear. A lot of people who are defense attorneys, it's in defense of the law. It's not because you want a bunch of criminals running around the streets. It's because you don't want to see an African-American or a Mexican or anyone else who may be from a disadvantaged community, right, treated differently. I don't want to see somebody in Riverdale, Shanita, sentenced to 10 years for something somebody in Alpharetta got probation for 12 months. Mm-hmm. It shouldn't happen that way. So it's about defending the law and defending each and every one of us. But I got to tell you, as we're talking about this thing on race, there are literally a large segment of the population, including some of us, who feel like it is not an issue anymore.
That's exactly right.
It's not an issue anymore. We don't want to hear about it. We don't want to talk about it. And to that extent, I want to play a clip from this video really quick, and then you and I are going to come back and talk about this. You guys, listen up. So we're going to go over here to my Chrome tab, and I want to show you guys just really what's out there and what it is we are dealing with when it comes to this.
We'll be teaching kids how to hate each other, how to dislike each other. That's pretty much all Kim said. It's pretty much what it's going to all come down to. You're going to deliberately teach kids, this white kid right here got it better than you because he's white? You're going to purposely tell a white kid, oh, the black people are all down and suppressed. How do I have 2 medical degrees if I'm sitting here oppressed? How do I get, first of all, time out. We've only got 5 minutes now. 5 minutes. 2 medical degrees. No mom, no dad in the house. Worked my way through college. Sat there and hustled my butt off to get through college. You gonna tell me somebody that looked like all y'all white folks kept me from doing that? Are you serious? What's sickening about this whole thing is what y'all doing right now is already something I do in my community right now to speak out against stuff, because black folks are getting told by other black folks, oh, you know you ain't gonna be able to do nothing out there in the world because white folks ain't gonna let you get no, oh, you know you're not gonna be able to do it because the white man gonna keep you down. Well, how did I get where I am right now if some white man kept me down? How am I now directing over folks that look just like you guys in this room right now? How? What kept me down? What oppressed me? I worked for myself from off the streets to where I am right now. You gonna sit here and tell me this lie of critical race theory? This the reason why black folks can't get ahead because of white folks? Are you kidding me? This is what we come to now. I can't believe we even talking about this right now. The last thing I'm gonna say right here is something that's crazy. Martin Luther King said he wanted his kids to grow up in a world where they are judged by the contents of their what? Their character, not their skin. If they let this stuff go on right now, it is absolutely doing the complete reverse of what he's doing. So when February comes, don't talk about Martin Luther King. When February comes, don't talk about black people. One of y'all will sit there and just pee on his grave with this nonsense. That's exactly what's about to happen. When it all comes down to it, the person that's going to be suffering from this, the one's going to be hurt from this, is the kids. 10 years from now, if this stuff goes on, whose fault is it going to be? Whose fault is it going to be? Who we going to look back on and blame for this? Because this is stuff we talking about right now. This stuff is going on right now. I do this stuff on a daily basis. I'm in the hood. I'm in the communities. I'm out there with folks in their face. I've been doing stuff since I was 18 years old, talking to black folks. And you know what? None of them are buying this nonsense. None of them are. But if you want to implement this into the school system, I guarantee you to the day that I die, I'm going to be the very person right there debunking stuff, tearing stuff down, letting them know they can do exactly what I did and get exactly where I am by putting themselves to work and getting there. And ain't not one white person ever gonna keep any of them from getting there. So the CRT stuff, BS.
Okay, so I'm back. Let me bring my guest back on. So, thoughts?
I think that it's sad because what you have is you have what I consider to be, and I'm just gonna go ahead and say this, it's the Clarence Thomas approach to life. And it is that I made it so everybody can make it. Never mind the fact that, Clarence Thomas, benefited from affirmative action, which he now says is, not needed, not necessary, even though we have seen in places where affirmative action was taken away, like on college campuses, that there was an immediate reduction in the number of people of color that attended those institutions. But I could talk about that all day. What I'm going to say about this individual is that, you know, there's always been a success story, right? There's always been a success story. Just because you succeeded does not mean that that every African American or every person of color or every person on the lower end of the socioeconomic rung is going to have the same access that you had, right? And so, listen, when it comes to critical race theory does not say that because you are a person of color, that you will not succeed, as he is trying to insinuate in that clip. What critical race theory says is that there is a definite connection between race in this country and the laws that were created. And when I teach race law and theory at Morehouse, the one takeaway from every lesson is that in spite of these laws, look at the success that African Americans have had, right? We have succeeded. We have done well, right? Not as well as we could have if those stupid laws didn't exist, but we have done well. Now imagine a world where those laws were never in place at all. What would we look like? What would communities of color look like if we did not have the laws that exist today?
You know, that is very telling, and based on your background, you're the perfect person to even have this conversation about it, because it's always driven me mad. And Derek and I talked about this on our last segment. We talked about this because we were like, okay, just because I made it, I haven't forgotten where I come from. I haven't forgotten what my parents went through, what their parents went through. I haven't forgotten that every time I drive through an inner city neighborhood that I understand that they don't have the same resources that my kids have at their school just because we live in a different zip code. Mm-hmm. Like, how do you forget stuff like that? Because even these laws that surround how schools are funded, right, based on where you live, change the access for that child living in that particular area. So you can't tell me that race don't matter, because these laws that have been put into place have had an impact on it. So if you grew up and you got to walk past a drug dealer to get to school, you got a liquor store on every corner, right? And you finally make it to school and everyone's on the free lunch program. Thank goodness it exists so that the kids can eat, but there's a mindset that's being created all along the way. The school system doesn't have the computers. It doesn't have the programs that it should have, right? Mm-hmm. And it's not telling you, okay, did you know while you're in high school, you could actually be getting college credits? Those things aren't being explained. Those things aren't available. They're not teaching the things that are being taught in other neighborhoods because the resources aren't there. Mm-hmm. So don't tell me that the laws do not impact what happens to this next generation of disadvantaged people. And it's not just about Blacks, because there are Indians who go to those schools. There are Mexicans who go to those schools. There are other races who go to those schools, even little white kids who happen to live in those neighborhoods who go to those schools.
You're right. You're absolutely right. And if I could just say this, so, you know, I listened to that story and it makes me so grateful that I had the parents and the grandparents that I had. I'll tell you that, for instance, my dad was told that he should go to a trade school. Nothing wrong with trade school, right? We need people in all, you know, areas, right? But he was told that he should go to trade school. And when he was told that, it wasn't a resounding endorsement. It was a knock against him. You're not smart enough to go to college. You're not intelligent enough. Well, not only did he go to college, but he went to medical school, and he also was, I don't even know how often this happens, but he aced his medical boards. He made a perfect score on his medical boards. And this is someone that was told that you should go to trade school, right? What's also interesting is that after he aced the boards, after he was now a doctor and was looking for his residency, he went to hospital after hospital after hospital and was denied and denied and denied, right? This is a person that aced his medical boards, right? Eventually, an African-American doctor, a Black doctor, told him the reason that they aren't bringing you on staff is because there is a fear that you will sleep or date white women at the hospital. So if you want to practice medicine, you need to take your fiance, which is my mom, they were engaged at the time. You need to take your fiance to the interviews with you. That sounds so crazy to me.
Pause, please. I cannot, I can't, but go ahead. I can't imagine that.
So in this day and age, as bad as things, are, like, things aren't perfect, right? I can't imagine someone telling me that I need to take my fiance or my wife, whatever, or significant other, whatever, with me to the interview. But do you know what was crazy? Is that my mom actually went to the interviews with him. For every hospital that he applied to, that she went to the interview with him as his wife, as his fiance, he was hired. For everyone that she did not go to, he was not. So when you tell me that race is not an issue, I really have no words, right? So I assume that the gentleman in that clip is a physician. He said something about having 2 medical degrees.
2 medical degrees, not one, but 2.
Yeah.
Yeah. 2.
So great. But imagine all of those people who are intelligent enough, but can't, for whatever reason, right? Right. So I just say that, and I really don't want to leave this conversation today without also just letting you know that one of the other topics that I discuss in my race, law, and theory class is, how do we define race in this country? And that is always a really interesting conversation, because I will get so many people telling me so many different things. Now, remember, for the people that are watching this segment, you are, adults, and you've lived life, and so I'm sure you probably can answer that question better than some of my students. But I'm just going to walk you through what some of my students say. So they say, oh, it's based on complexion. Well, we have people that are very light. So if it's based on complexion, then how do you know, right? Then they will say hair texture. Well, I think we can all agree that in the Black community, texture ranges, right?
Yeah.
You will have some people that say it is their facial features, lips, nose, right? But again, that varies depending upon who you're talking to. And so then you have to start, then I challenge them to look at it from a legal perspective. And that takes us all the way back to Plessy versus Ferguson, right? That basically was the separate but equal case, right? And that was a case where Homer Plessy was 7/8 white, okay? So basically, Homer Plessy looked like what we consider a white person to look like. Mm-hmm. In every way that you would describe race, he looked like a white person, right? But because he was 1/8 Black, that meant that he was Black. So you can't look at Homer Plessy and talk about hair texture. You can't look at Homer Plessy and talk about lips and nose. You can't look at Homer Plessy and talk about complexion, right? And so it was codified in the legal system that having 1/8 or a drop of African-American blood means that you are Black, right? And so I think that you also have to examine that component when you're talking about critical race theory. Because really, critical race theory, I mean, race in this country is just a construct, you know? It's something that, you know, the majority has sort of constructed and outlined for us. And our legal system has sort of breathed life into this, right? And I know that there are going to be so many people that are going to disagree with that assessment, but this is not me, right, saying this. This is the Supreme Court in Plessy, right? This is the Supreme Court in Dred Scott. This is the Supreme Court in, I'm trying to think of some of the other landmark cases, Brown versus Board of Education.
Yes.
This is judicial precedence. This isn't Winfield Murray, right? This is the Supreme Court. So I just want to put that out there.
Okay, that was a mic drop moment. And I got to post a comment because Lawana Hurd Tucker wants to know if she can audit your class.
And she can. If we are in session, which I think we will be, you can absolutely audit the class. I love when people come through because, you know, I think that having people outside of that 18 to 21 year range, right? 21-year-old range can add so much to the conversation. So I often have people come in, sit in the class, or even guest speakers or whatever. And even if you audit the class, you know, you can speak and add and give your comments and opinions just as if you were in the class.
Okay, that is amazing. So we're going to pause for the cause. Our session's almost over, and I'm going to give you the closing thoughts. But you guys know we got to do a giveaway. It is time for our Be Blessed segment, and I am excited about that today. This has been such an amazing conversation. Let me go ahead and show you guys our Be Blessed segment today. Is going to be sponsored by none other than the Flukas team of Independent Realty. I got to tell you, the Flukas team, they are my agents. Please make sure that you screenshot this, take a picture of it, send them a text so they have your contact information. That is Frank Flukas and Katrina Flukas. They sold us our house here. They also just helped me sell my townhouse. Whatever house I get next, they will be my agents, period. So make sure that you guys are supporting them just as they support Unfiltered, because thanks to them, we have a giveaway today of $250. So you guys, what I want you to do, you know how we do it. We're going to take a 60-second commercial break so that you all can put in the chat a number 1 through 100. And I'm going to have my guests send me a private chat or a text telling me what that number is going to be. So guys, here's your 60-second timer. Guys, okay. That 60-second timer, I see all the numbers in there. And we're going to go with your first thought, Murray, because I think no one was exact on either one of those. But we'll go with your first thought. I see a couple of more numbers that are still coming in, but without telling the number, tell me why you chose it. The first number.
It was the year of my birth.
What the rationale was, I figured that's what it was, which would make the second number related to that, I'm assuming.
The second number is my age.
Your actual age, okay. That's what I thought, guys. So I see you, Pamela Cannon. I wanted to give a little bit more time because sometimes people get on the broadcast and they're a few seconds behind. And so that's why you see these numbers are still popping up. But just so you guys know, the number for today is actually 76. And I believe that that would be Miss Sherry Boudreau or Boudreau. Sherry Boudreau, you are the winner of $250 today. You guessed 73, which would make you the closest one. So congratulations on winning $250. Here with us on Unfiltered, and welcome Sherry to the broadcast. I want to make sure that you can see this right here. If you can look up there, send me an email to beblessed@bcwright.com, beblessed@bcwright.com, so that we can get that over to you. We'll do Bitcoin if you want Bitcoin. We'll send it via Cash App or we'll send it via Apple Pay. So just make sure that you guys are sending that over after you win. So with that being said, Murray, give me your closing thoughts. You dropped the mic today. You educated us on so many things. You got a couple of adult students who are definitely going to be auditing your class. No, you weren't trying to pick no people up, but hey, we coming. So we enjoyed that. So thank you so much. So please, I'm going to let you give us our closing thoughts.
Okay, so I think my closing thoughts is actually a request. If the guests want me to come back, because I feel like we still didn't say everything. So if they want me to come back, I would love to come back to talk about redlining in this country and how race plays an important part in redlining. Right. And we can talk about some of the things such as the African Americans or the Blacks or whatever you want to call them, who lived in Buckhead, right? And who were basically.
I'm already getting the yes, please come back. So they're already saying yes, come back, come back, come back. So, and let me tell you, keep talking about the redlining, but we actually experienced it in 2008 when Derek was trying to sell his office in the West End, and that 30310 area was redlined. So yes, please come back and talk about that and keep going.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll talk about, Blacks that were pushed out of Buckhead. We will talk about how where the site of Lake Lanier, that was a Black town, and two young Black men in Lake Lanier, I forgot what the area was called, but they were accused of raping a white woman. And basically the town, they had white vigilantes that just went by threatening and killing and shooting the Black people that lived there until they all left. And then they flooded the town to make it into a water, reservoir for the city of Atlanta and all of that. And the town is still underneath Lake Lanier.
It's
so
there's water. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So I cannot wait. And we're going to have pictures and graphics and all that stuff to show that, because I've heard about this town that was under the water. I had no idea the history the brief history that you just shared with us.
And that has happened in this country in more than, I think, 100 instances across this country. So we have a lot to still discuss.
Yes, we do. So we will be back for part 3. And okay, give me a date. What date you coming back? I'm going to make you commit. What date? Where's your calendar?
I don't know, Bernadette. This takes so much out of me. I mean, I get so worked up. Let's try mid-July.
I was going to say, I want to do it in July, and Rafiq's like, oh, I loved it. Everyone literally is like, you have to come back. And I want to do it mid-July, because I actually, listening to you talk, I'm going to have images available to be able to show some of the stuff that you're talking about and some of the data and things like that as you're talking, so that they can get a visual of it. Because this is, and Rafiq said he lived through it, and I have a story about redlining, and I may have a couple other people who have a story about it as well. So thank you so much. Oh my goodness, you blessed us today. We appreciate your knowledge. We appreciate your willingness to serve. And we appreciate you coming on with Unfiltered to talk to us and teach us about just staying woke, and teach us about what we need to know, because no one's talking about this, right? And you're telling us the truth about it, and you're giving us the proper definition and putting things in their proper place. So thank you for all you do. Thank you for
having me.
And thank you even for your students are blessed to have you, because you challenge them to think differently. Because if you ask someone the question about how do they define race, none of us are going to look to the law.
Mm-hmm.
And say, but this
right.
is what the Supreme Court says. I'm not telling you what culture says. I'm telling you what the Supreme Court is saying. And it's a completely different perspective. And as you've been on, the numbers have continued to go up. I can't see everyone that's on, but it's been continuing to rise. So thank you so much, Lee. Of course, everyone unanimously said you have to come back. So because we know you're coming back, y'all need to bring 2 people with you because that conversation is going to be fire. So until next time, you guys, thank you for being with us on Unfiltered. You know how we do it. Be blessed and stay woke. On this outgoing thing, you guys are going to hear a clip from my nephew as we say goodbye. Make sure you support his music. And I look forward to seeing you next time on Unfiltered with BC Wright.
Take care.
Bye.
It's bigger than me. It's bigger than me. It's bigger, it's bigger than me. It's bigger than me. Yeah. It's bigger, yeah. It's bigger than me. It's bigger than me. Yeah, yeah. It's bigger, yeah. It's bigger than me. It's bigger.